Hello and welcome to Service Above Self. I'm Clark Mason. Rotary International is a worldwide organization of community volunteers incorporating 1.2 million people. And every year, these 1.2 million people choose leaders in amongst their groups, and every year they change. And that happens everywhere from the international president all the way down to the club level. Here to talk about that with us today is Sue Klock and Eileen Rao. Sue is the current district governor, and Eileen Rao is the district governor-elect. So welcome to the show.
Thank you, Clark. It's great to be here.
Very nice to be here.
Good to have you here as well. Tell us about how this whole process works of elections, of leaders, and how that all happens annually. Sue?
It's an interesting process, and I think you might think it's not a great way to run a business, but you have to remember that we're volunteers. Even though our clubs are made up of professional men and women, they have their own businesses, but when they come to do their Rotary work, they're volunteers, and this seems to work out fairly well. We have a Rotary International president. This year he's from India, Kalyan Banerjee. And at the district level, obviously I'm the current governor. We have 62 clubs in our district. Our district is made up of Western Massachusetts, 4 counties, and the northern 4 counties of Connecticut. And each club chooses a new president each year. So we have a total change in leadership, as you mentioned, top to bottom. And it's really an interesting process. The one thing I think Rotary does well, and it does it in a variety of ways, is train these people to be ready to take over come July 1st when our year begins.
Yeah, and that's a very important thing to do because you have to have some leadership, or there's no guidance or nobody sets goals for things to be done. Eileen, you're the current district governor-elect, and hear about governor-elect, president-elect, or something like that. It's a term we certainly hear in the case of the president of the United States. But of course, in the case of the president of the United States, they're elected, and 2.5 months later they're taking over a whole country. They don't really do that to you. You get a little more warning as far as that's concerned.
Well, that's for sure. Rotary has a lot of training for anyone who takes any office. I was actually selected 2 years ago. So I've been in the process for 2 years, going to various seminars. There is what's called a Zone Institute, and during that period there is training for both the governor's nominee, which is basically your second year after you're selected, and also for when you're district governor-elect. In fact, we just recently got back from the Zone Institute, and I'm a graduate of the governor-elect training. And Rotary spends literally a small fortune training its leaders, not only the governors, but the presidents. We're also in the process of organizing and getting a president-elect training seminar together in Framingham, Massachusetts. And that includes 8 districts in New England, plus it includes a few clubs in Quebec. And again, we bring people in from all over the United States and sometimes over the entire world. Last year we had he was president-elect last year, Banerjee, who's now the president. They are speaking to us and encouraging the presidents in their duties for their year starting July 1st. But again, as Sue said, and as you said, we keep changing over, so it's marching. And it's really good because it keeps you fresh. You don't get stale. You're just psyched and pumped up by the training that Rotary gives you, and you're just, you carry that through the year. And you're a little tired afterwards, and then you have new leadership that starts again. Nice cycle. Yeah,
so you definitely could have some burnout after a while.
Yes, a little bit sometimes. It's a lot, but it's, exciting. I love Rotary. And as I tease, I drank the Kool-Aid and my president-elect training back in 2005, and it stayed with me. So it just, it's a wonderful organization. It's the family of Rotary.
Now, as you mentioned, Kalyan Banerjee took over as Rotary International President this year, and he's set forth some goals and a theme for this year. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Each year, the Rotary International President has a theme, and it is supposed to inspire the districts and the clubs. His theme this year is Reach Within to Embrace Humanity. And as I think about this, I was thinking actually about some of the bell ringing that went on in connection with the memorial service for 9/11. And you have a famous poem written by John Donne that is, "Ask not for whom the bell tolls for thee." That's actually very similar in concept to what Kalyan Banerjee is speaking of. So it's not he's from India, this is not some mystical notion. The idea is more to reach within yourself and think about what makes you human, and then consider how that really links you to people who are right around you, but also people who are far beyond you that you will never meet. So it's really a very similar concept, I think, something that you can really grasp.
Rotary International is the world's first service organization. And with that, there's many different kinds of service that we do, and starting this year, we actually now have a new avenue of service. First, probably a little review what the 4 avenues of service that we've previously had, and then what's new this year.
Okay. We have had 4 avenues of service for a very long time. Rotary is over 100 years old as an organization, a service organization, the first, in fact. And the avenues of service from the beginning are club service, community service, vocational service, and international service.
Now with those, in the case of club service, the big thing with that is, I guess the big way we would describe that is networking, interpersonal communication between other people in the club, and so that everybody within the club will benefit from one another just by having that socialization.
Fun and fellowship.
Exactly.
That's the glue that holds Rotary together. I think that's the whole point of why our weekly meetings are important, and we try to really stick to that. The other thing is, beside club service, the community service, I would say that in every community where you have a Rotary club, the community benefits because Rotary really focuses, those Rotarians focus on the needs of that community.
Right, so that's done locally.
Absolutely.
And so, common things that are done locally. I remember, I have to admit that, when I was in high school, I worked at a restaurant where a Rotary met, and I had no idea what they did. But I knew that at some point they gave out a scholarship at, graduation and things of that nature. And that's a very common thing that Rotary does. But there's many other things that they do locally as well, from food drives or participating with soup kitchens and things of that nature. And there's many other programs that are like that service the local neighborhoods.
Right. Even some of the yard cleanup, because of course in New England, everybody needs to do something with their leaves and everything in the fall, and we have our Rotarians go out and help some of the elderly who can't do that. It's a wonderful community organization. We have international service, which came a little bit later to Rotary, but basically once they started having clubs that were outside the United States, which happened fairly quickly after its founding in 1905, we basically also help people outside of our own country, and we are alerted to those and luckily know about those needs because we have clubs in other countries. And the fourth is our most important in some ways, vocational service. It's our brand, if you will. I think it's what distinguishes Rotary from other service organizations, that we are focused on our vocational service aspect. We are supposed to have a diverse group of professional and business men and women in each club. And we combine that with our 4-way test, which is an ethical component, so that it really is what distinguishes us. And so those are the original 4.
Yeah, and in a case, this television program is actually a form of vocational service that our club does.
Absolutely.
But now this year we've got a brand new avenue of service, and tell us about that.
Sure. I think that the best way to think about that is that we've had always, historically, Rotarians helping youth in their communities in various ways. As you mentioned, we give scholarships. We've had youth exchange programs for a very long time. But in 2010, Rotary International decided that we really needed to focus on that. And so rather than just having us acknowledge that we have these various programs for youth, they would create a new avenue of service. And I have to say, when it happened, I just sort of thought, well, what's that all about? Why do we need that?
Yeah, we're already doing some of it.
Right,
Yeah.
but then as soon as I saw it happen, we had our Presidents-elect training last year up in Framingham, which Eileen has mentioned. We had a panel discussion, and wow, it was like people really, it sort of brought it out in the light. So whatever you can do, and it was just a very, very clever, if you will, move to show how much Rotary is doing with youth. And also getting club presidents to care about these things. We've had more, we have Interact and Rotaract. Those Interact is a high school program, Rotary Youth Leadership Awards, Youth Exchange programs, but we've had more clubs decide they want to start an Interact club this year, just since that panel discussion at that one conference. It really, we did a repeat of that at our district assembly as well.
And that's the high school level
Exactly.
type of club. So it's
Yep.
a junior form of Rotary. Because you certainly, nowadays, you see that many high schools have as a requirement that you do a certain amount of community service to graduate, but in many cases, they're not really telling you what to do.
Yeah. Colleges now as well. I was told by a friend of mine who is a professor out in the Midwest, when I wanted to start more Rotaract clubs here in our district, she said, they'll probably have a community service office of some kind where they really are trying to encourage the kids in the colleges to do this kind of stuff too, more and more now. So yeah, it's a new source for us for potential Rotarians.
Well, absolutely. I mean, that's certainly one of our biggest problems is the fact that Rotary, and this is still true to a certain point, is probably more famous for being an old men's kind of a club. And
right, I've been told I shouldn't say that anymore.
No,
though. It's beginning to offend.
Certainly, the two of you are not representative of that, but it's still in many cases people's impression of it. But part of that is recognizing that we need to come up with ways of getting younger people involved and actually helping them organize it, as I really think is a big thing. You can have people out there doing community service, but there's so much more that they can do if they actually learn some of the things that we've learned in actually taking a little bit of leadership and being able to learn how to work together to accomplish things. Much greater things can be accomplished.
No, it's interesting that you're talking about trying to get younger people in Rotary. I was at a Rotary Club meeting at noon today out in Plainville, Connecticut, and they inducted a new member. And if she was 30, I don't know, she looked like she was in her late 20s. And I just went up to her and I said, oh, you're going to just love it. I was so excited to see them inducting a young person, younger than I am. Anyway, but also they had just inducted the last couple of weeks people who were in their 30s. So maybe we're getting away from the graying of Rotary, getting younger people involved, because that's our future right there.
Well, that's certainly a very important thing. And when we come back, we'll talk about more things that happen on a local level. We're going to take a break. And when we do that, we'll be back in a minute, and we'll talk again with Eileen and Sue.
When you start with Rotary, good things happen. Rotary's ordinary people working together to clean the environment, stop disease, and accomplish other extraordinary things.
Who says you can't teach an old dog new tricks? Maybe you should go to your shelter and get a mature dog who will make your blues disappear. How's that for tricks? I got picked. Wow.
Welcome back to Service Above Self. I'm Clark Mason. We're speaking to District Governor Sue Klock, and District Governor-elect Eileen Rao about the new things that are happening in Rotary. Now, we've been discussing what's been happening on an international basis and the new avenues of the new avenue of service, but of course, your main focus is the people right around here in District 7890, northern part of Connecticut and the west part of Massachusetts, and so it's up to you to kind of give them some directives as well. And so, what's new this year?
Okay,
for your district?
Some of it isn't new, but as a governor, what I am asked to do is pick just a couple of goals and really emphasize those and help the clubs to understand, if possible, why those are my goals and how they might fit into those and help make things happen around the district that matter. And so I have, top of my priorities is growing our membership, because I believe that as a service organization, if we don't grow our clubs and increase the diversity in our clubs, we will not be able to serve our communities as effectively as we have in the past. So I basically have been emphasizing that, and I've got a good team of people who are working on that for us around the district, and we hope to grow our membership by about 7% during this year, which is my goal.
It certainly is an important thing because, as they say, you know, many hands make light the work, and the membership itself is important. But also, it's not that, you know, Rotary does it all by themselves. We have many people who are friends of Rotary that help as well, who are not members, and it's important to grow those. If you can't provide full-time membership, then if there's some service that you can provide in assisting Rotary goals, we appreciate that too.
Right, and we have, of course, we've mentioned our interactors and Rotaractors, and they very often cooperate with the club that is sponsoring them to accomplish projects, and that helps. But basically also to understand the needs in your community, you need to have people within the club who really are representative of the community and can then help with assessing real needs. And I think that that's one of the main reasons to increase and diversify club membership. So that's a major goal for me this year, and it's not just this year, but it is definitely this year a priority. Another goal is for us to continue to support Rotary's effort to eradicate polio. And the reason we do that is because we basically are fundraisers, and we want the public to be aware of this so that they will want to participate with us, because these funds then go to our foundation, and the funds are used to pay for things that are outside of our country, internationally, where we take, we'll go for National Immunization Days and be using the oral vaccine, because in countries like India and Pakistan, Nigeria, Afghanistan, where these polio is still endemic, they don't have enough trained medical professionals to go out and reach all the millions of children who need to be immunized. So unlike our country, where we're so blessed and we have so many medical professionals that we can easily administer shots, and that's the most effective way to immunize a child, we actually will use an oral vaccine. And we have to use we go 6 rounds of 2 drops around for a child to be effectively immunized in these countries.
Yeah, I was somewhat surprised to learn in the documentary, The Final Inch, which does document people's efforts in trying to eradicate polio, and be noted that, you know, Rotary is only part of that. The fact that on a National Immunization Day in India, which happens, every couple of years they do this, they mobilize 400 million people in order to get the vaccine out to a very large area, and it's very difficult to do. We were discussing actually just before we came back from commercial break that this vial is an example of the type of vial that this vaccine is delivered in. And there's 2 things going on with this particular vial that it's actually bad.
That's right. Because and you know it's bad.
Right. Because it actually has to be given to somebody, and it has to be refrigerated everywhere from the factory to just before the point
Absolutely.
that it's actually given to a small child. So the fact that this one has a black square and the liquid has turned red is an indication that this has actually gone bad. So,
which helps the medical people who are and the volunteers who are delivering. You know, one thing is that they actually do these several times a year in India. And one of the problems is that they have to monitor and see what's going on. If they start having a case or cases in a particular area, then that's where they're really going to want to focus their efforts. But they'll do it at least once a year. They do it nationwide, which is, as you said, millions and millions of children. There are millions of children born, you know, every day there. It's just, it's a huge number of people that have to be vaccinated.
Yeah, you're talking about a nation of over a billion
Yeah,
people.
right.
So it's, and an incredible landmass as well. I mean, there's a lot of area, and these places do not have the kind of transportation that we have around here. I was somewhat surprised to learn that this vaccine is actually a live vaccine rather than what we were probably all given as children, which would be a dead virus vaccine. And they're actually, to increase the effects, they're actually depending on this to go from one person to another to actually increase the effectiveness of this polio vaccine. So that's a pretty interesting thing.
Yeah. And sometimes they have to do emergency immunizations, as they did last year in November. There were many cases. I think it was up to 200 cases in the Congo. So the Rotary, right away, we wrote a check, and with the help of the CDC, the World Health Organization, and UNICEF, they were in there doing their immunizations, because that country was pretty stable, and all of a sudden you have several hundred cases. And last year we also heard Dr. Scott, who's in charge of the Polio Plus campaign for Rotary, and he said one of the problems, and I didn't realize this, is that a lot of these people migrate. So they may miss an immunization, they may bring the polio virus with them, and that's what they believe happened in the Congo. Somebody brought it in.
Because one of the things that we've talked about, the final inch, is that we literally could be maybe 1 or 2 years away from eradicating the wild polio vaccine. And so that would be a good thing, that it's not floating around out of there, kind of corner it and kill it. And because the problem with this, of course, is that because we have, a global economy and people can fly from India to here in a day, or any other place in the world, that this could be brought back here or any place else that quickly.
Absolutely. One of the things is that they are, and one of the things that the money from the foundation goes for, aside from just getting the vaccine and having it be in a cold carrier and all that, and paying, but they pay the people who are distributing like about $1 a day. They aren't highly paid, but they still have to be paid. And they also use some voluntary work. But they had a case just recently in China, and they are able now, with the monitoring that's done, to be able to, they know that it's a wild polio virus, came from Pakistan. So somehow there was a transference, there was a journey there that exposed this person. The thing about the Congo that Dr. Scott also told us is that it was primarily teenagers and people in their 20s who were getting this. It wasn't like, typically it's the very young children, and that's because they weren't being immunized back when they should have been. So they were getting complacent in a country. But as long as it's out there, it is just a plane ride away.
Right.
So. And it's frightening because the immunization rate in our country isn't what it should be. Some people say, well, polio hasn't been around for years and years and years. They don't see any cases here. And there's also, this supposed link to autism, which they've disproved. And parents are concerned about getting their children immunized. And they're sitting ducks. As you said, one plane ride, you could bring it here.
Absolutely, and that's one of the big fears in the case of some of the resistance in other countries to people taking this, is that in some cases, they believe it's an American plot to sterilize them, which is not. But they have their fears about things being brought in from other parts of the world. But it's all pretty interesting. But think about that. Sometimes if you buy a candy bar or a hamburger or a pancake at a pancake breakfast from a Rotary Club, some of that money goes to a different part of the world.
Absolutely. 60 cents will immunize a child for life. That's what it costs. 6 times, 2 drops, 60 cents.
So what else is new here in the district?
Oh, our district is exciting. We are working toward more cooperation among our 62 clubs, because we, again, want to have people understand who Rotarians are and what we do. So we have, this November, we're going to have a Veterans Day project that every club is going to cooperate with and work with their interactors. And that will be district-wide, and we'll be publicizing that. And we're going to do some greening of the district. We're going to be planting trees all around the district. 1 tree for every Rotarian, which means over 2,400 new trees in one way or another. And of course, we've had terrible damage in our district, both from the tornadoes in the spring up in Massachusetts. So there'll be some concentration in those areas. And just recently with a hurricane, we've got damage along riverbanks and things like that that needs to be helped, and we'll be working on that.
So in the coming year, as you, well, it's less than that, even that now. I mean, you've got
I think I have lots of time. I guess I'm wrong.
I was going to say it's sneaking up, you know, so it's
Very
really not going to
quickly.
be all that much longer. You've got that coming up, and I assume that you still have a little more training and planning to do coming up before you take office.
Yes, in January there is the big training where the district governors-elect from all over the world come to San Diego, and Rotary brings us all in, houses us for almost an entire week, and we get trained along with our partners or spouses. So my husband has to come. Unfortunately, he's kind of in the minority in his group because there are a lot of male governors in the world, but he's a good sport, and he feels that he's kind of like one of the girls as well. But we just had 2-day training in Boston, and it's just fantastic. You learn so much about Rotary and actually about yourself, how to be a leader, how to present yourself, how to solve problems. So Rotary is really, they say it's like corporate level training leadership, and you learn so much.
Oh, that's important because, as has been mentioned before, this is, after all, a volunteer organization. So it's, you know, not like you can just, you know, stomp on the table and, you know, this is what you're going to do, because
Oh, you can't?
they're not gonna.
Oh, darn.
I don't know if we have time, but I just want to say it's very important to note that the Rotary Foundation does not pay for this training. Our money, the money that goes to the Rotary Foundation, is strictly used for good works, and it's
Right,
really
there's
100%
other
used.
dues that we pay
It's
that
100%
they
used.
pay for that.
But
That's right.
yeah.
That's got nothing to do with any donations of
Yeah.
that type. Well, that's just about all the time that we have, and I want to thank you both for coming in and talking about what's new this year and what's going to be coming up next year with Rotary. So thanks for being here.
It was great to be here. Thanks, Clark.
Yeah, thank you for inviting us.
Very good. So for all of us here at Service Above Self, as we've always said, is go out there and find a worthy cause and lend a helping hand. Until next time, goodbye.